I personally also believe that, you can't be an alcoholic if you don't drink every day. That's something that
Mm,
really set me back a lot because I kept telling myself that, even though I was personally a binge drinker. So it didn't matter if I did it every day because whenever I did start, I didn't know when to stop. But I kind of kept that in the back of my head. You would see it on TV. This is what you would hear. And so if I didn't drink every day, I felt like that didn't apply to me.
Hey y'all, what's going on? Welcome back to the Stacking Days podcast, where we highlight underrepresented journeys of sobriety. I'm your host, Ray Donovan, and I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. We have a sister with us that I think has a fantastic story, and just really a monumental journey. I've witnessed her talk about her journey on other platforms, and she's come a long way. I mean, you talk about battling addiction, facing, suicide and potential death in the face. And now she's literally creating safe spaces for other women who have struggled with substances. So come such a long way. Danay, thank you so much for taking some time to join me here on Stacking Days.
Absolutely. I'm so honored to be here. It's such a privilege. I love your podcast. I feel like we've been friends on social media for a while now. So I
We
feel
have.
so honored to be here today. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. And for those of you who are listening, Danae just moved to a new city, so she's like earmarking some time in the midst of her trying to like get her grounding and her feet underneath her in Tulsa. So I again, thank you for spending the time. But let's jump right into it. Let's go all the way back to your relationship with alcohol. Where did it start? What was kind of your why and your motivator behind, why you continue to drink? And then we'll just kind of take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say I started drinking pretty young, like maybe like 15, around that age. I am an only child. So my mom, she worked a lot. And so that left me home alone a lot. And
Mm,
so being an only child, you want your friends, you want someone to hang out with. And that just kind of led to a lot of parties, just having people over for all the wrong reasons, if you will. And I kind of just kept that lifestyle up as I got older. I was always the party house. I always had people over. I just always wanted others around, right? And as I got older, it just increased. I moved from Alabama to Houston, and that was my first time living in such a big city. I moved to Houston right when I turned 21. So it was just like a perfect, perfect
go
fire.
time.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I just wanted to try everything. I moved from a college town. I had never lived in such a big city. And so I was so eager to experience everything Houston had to offer. And that just kind of led me down a pretty destructive path. I was arrested. I had some mental health stays. I lost jobs. I wrecked cars. I mean, for about a decade, it was just this constant battle of me trying to convince myself that alcohol wasn't the problem, everyone else was. All these things were happening to me. I had the worst luck in the world. And so finally, it took me finding a really good counselor. COVID really helped, forced me to sit at home, forced me to look at myself and realize that all I was doing all day was drinking. That was it. And even more once COVID hit, because we were all stuck at home. And I just felt like I had no purpose. I just felt like I was going nowhere and I wanted to make a change. And so that was what I did. I believe it was May 10th, 2020. I finally decided I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to hurt the people around me. It's time for a change. And that's my sobriety date.
Wow. I mean, that's a lot packed into a nutshell right there. And I know,
Yeah.
and we're going to unpack some of that because, I've, like I said, I've had the luxury of listening to you talk about your story on other platforms. So
Mhm.
I do have a few questions for you. One, starting with your mom. So you said that you're a single child, and I'm going to assume, but correct me if I'm wrong. Your mom was a single mom.
Yeah, correct. My dad was around, but he wasn't because he also suffered from addiction. So
Okay,
he was kind of in and out of my life a lot, pretty much until he passed away when I was 14,
I
from
see.
an overdose from complications of drug abuse. So My mom got sober though when I was like 6, so like my memories of her and her addiction are very hazy, and spotty. I do remember the day she left to go to rehab. I do remember it feeling like she was gone forever. It was only
Yeah.
30 days, but it felt like years at the time to me. And when she came back, everything was just, it was different. And so a lot of my memories of her and her abuse are minimal. It's more of her recovery and how she changed her life and the things she did after that.
From from the time that your mom went to rehab, she never had a relapse after that. She was, kind of on her journey of sobriety and recovery from there on out.
Yeah, she never had a relapse, of course, that I know of. But no, she's been sober for over 30 something years. She's a person that she did take anti abuse. She did tell me that. We spoke about it. So
Okay.
when she was at the rehab, she did take that to kind of help. But
Yeah.
she was more or less just done. She was in her 30s at this time.
Mm.
She said she never really wanted kids. And then, of course, I popped out. So her
Right.
responsibilities changed. And, as myself being in my 30s now, I can totally see what she was going through and understand all of the challenges that she had on her. She was a foreman at General Motors. She had a big job, she had a big career. She had a lot going on. And so I can understand how it was easy for her to, abuse more than usual.
Yeah. Well, good on her for being able to address that in her life, and congratulations to her long term sobriety. A question I have, and obviously you can't put words in your mother's mouth, but what do you think she was thinking as she saw you kind of progress in your own journey with alcohol, being that she had such an intimate understanding as to what that looked like from the outside at least, and maybe have a sense of what you were dealing with on your own.
Oh yeah. I believe it definitely hurt her. That is for sure. Because again, I'm an only child. So when I would get in trouble or end up in jail, she's the first person I would call. So,
Yeah.
after a while that became really repetitive and I could tell it was just breaking her heart. It really was. And there were a few times when she did tell me, like, I remember being where you are. I remember, waking up and, having alcohol seeping out of your pores. I remember a few years I had to move back in with her and I had a rough night and I was getting ready to get up and go to work and she was trying to wake me up. And I just remember her telling me that, like, I can smell it seeping out of you, you know. She really did want me to get help. But again, I blamed everything. I blamed my mental health. I blamed, the relationships I was in. And she would constantly be in the back saying, but what about the drinking? But again, when you're in that constant cycle, you just don't want to hear it. And that's what I was at that time. I didn't want to hear it.
Yeah. It's hard to hear it when you're so deep in it. It's like, I feel like, you know, one, recognizing you have a problem is one thing, but even starting that dialogue with oneself is so far from like the mind of someone who's addicted to a substance, which is why people always are talking about rock bottoms, because sometimes it takes like such a jolt to like get you to a spot where you're able to have an honest conversation with yourself. And I totally feel that.
Yeah.
so
She
so
wasn't rock bottom. My mom was for sure during COVID. I
yeah.
had to move back in with her. And that day that she just couldn't really look at me, I knew I had done too much. And that was my sobriety date. That next day, I just stopped.
Hmm. Well, tell me about that. Let's talk about what led up to May 10th, 2020. What were some of the signs, the signals, maybe the jolting rock bottoms that that led you to that moment where you were just like, I got to do something different. I mean, if you don't mind sharing some details, if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, like I said, it was during COVID. My relationship with alcohol was always back and forth. I kind of would stop and then start again, or, I would say that I wasn't drinking, but I was, I would keep it at home. And so during COVID, this was part of when I had kind of stopped and I just started like only doing happy hours before COVID hit and we were all laid off. And so a lot of my old coworkers, we would do like Zoom happy hours.
Okay.
But the Zoom would end and I'm sitting here with this massive bottle of vodka, and I would just keep going. And this particular night, I don't know what happened. Obviously, I completely blacked out. I don't remember anything, but I do know when I went downstairs that morning, because I had to move back in with my mom after losing, both of my jobs, she just couldn't look at me. She couldn't talk to me. She wouldn't acknowledge I was in the room. And, you know, she finally did look at me and just told me that whatever I did last night, she hopes that I never do it again. And it was like the last time that I wanted to see her shoulders slouch when I walk in the room. It was the last time I just wanted to see that disappointment. I was just like, you keep hurting everyone around you. Like your actions are bigger than just you.
Yeah.
Um, your mom, you keep doing this to her over and over and over, and she doesn't deserve it. So that for me was the day that I said, okay, we're making a change. Like this has to fucking stop. It just has
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. I mean I've been there. I was there in September of 2021, so still in COVID, a little bit further down the line, but very much in that space where it just became really intimate, right? Like you're
Hmm.
not going out as much. You're spending much more time inside. You're spending a lot of time with the folks that you love, and you can't really escape their view, right? Like I feel like there's nowhere to hide, right? No, so I get that. I found it challenging to put together, uh for lack of a better term, like a program that I could be a part of during COVID. So I kind of made my own up. So take us back to May 10th, May 11th. What were some of the tools that you turned to, or what program did you subscribe to in order to get some early success in your sobriety?
Yeah. Like I said, this was not my first time trying to get sober, right? I had a couple tries, a couple fails. I had actually even went back to school to start to learn about why addiction happens. Went back to school to become a chemical dependency counselor for drug and alcohol. And so at this time I had an overwhelming amount of tools just there floating around. But for me this time, the biggest thing that worked was focusing on my spiritual and my body. I started replacing those times when I would drink with doing exercises, meditating, yoga. Getting out of the house was really, really important. During COVID, it kind of made it easy because there was absolutely no one out anywhere. So, most parks and things were empty. Um, I just started to move my body and just really make sure that those times when I would usually be craving a drink or when I would be drinking, I was doing something active or doing something else, right? That was the basis. And I did really, get back into therapy and, looking for community was like the biggest thing that really helped me.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, as far as like getting back into therapy, or getting into therapy, what were some of the things that you were looking to address? Because we talk a lot in sobriety and recovery around the quote unquote work that needs to be done in order to like really fortify yourself
Yeah.
in staying sober and developing oneself. What did you find that you needed to address past the actual abuse of the substance that you really needed to get into in order to pursue a healthier lifestyle?
Yeah. For me, the biggest thing I struggled with was shame.
Okay.
The shame of the things that I had done to people I loved, to people while I was under the influence. I struggled from depression. And so that plus the depression was just like eating me alive. I kind of felt like there was no coming back from that. That's what I really had to work on in therapy because, I was not a polite drunk. I was not a fun drunk. I was a mean drunk. So there are relationships that I cannot build back. There are relationships that unfortunately they don't care if I'm sober or not. I've said things that I can't take back. And so losing those bonds and those connections that I valued so much, it kind of held me back. And I kind of felt like the people that were around really didn't care for me, really didn't care about me deeply. They just wanted what was surface level entertainment. And so I kind of felt really alone. That was a big thing. I felt super isolated, alone. And, these were all the consequences of my own actions. So what do I do?
Yeah.
And, my therapist really helped me learn to love myself, to understand that, these are things that happened when I wasn't who I truly am, when I was really under the influence and making these decisions and saying these things, not with a pure heart. Um, and so really working on that, learning who I really am, what kind of things I really like to do, who I want to be around, it moved into all of those. And when you start to learn about yourself.
Yeah. I think over the last few episodes here, the concept of shame and guilt come up, and obviously there's a distinction between the two of those. Shame being, you tying your actual self-worth to things that you've done and making them who you are versus them being things that you've done. I'm
Right.
curious, you said that, you came into a space where you started to learn who Danae actually is. What
Mhm.
did you determine who did you determine that you actually were versus, the actions that you had been doing, in a drunken state? Like who are you versus who you thought you were?
Um, Before I always would, go to therapy and I would just be so depressed because I would be like, I'm so lazy, like
Mm,
I don't do anything, even when I'm not drinking, I just have no energy. I'm just laying around. I'm just, and it was so frustrating because then it would sink me into these depressions where I would feel like I had no worth and I didn't even want to be here. I didn't want to exist anymore. And the suicidal ideation started to come in, and those dark places seemed more comfortable than actually trying to fight for myself and see the light, And so I had to go to therapy and really talk about what do I want from life, And I think that was the starting point. Like, I would love to help other people. I would love to be a voice for someone else who didn't have it like I did, a Black woman in therapy, which is something that's, definitely needed. And once I started to see that, I had goals all of a sudden, like, okay, well, then I need to finish this degree. I need to go back to school and get this done. I need to work on all of these things. And it just made me realize, wow, I'm actually really motivated when it's something I'm passionate about. And it gave me time to try everything. I'm actually really
yeah.
creative, trying music, writing, videos. I made my own docu-series, like, it's unbelievable the things you can do when you're not worried about being in your addiction,
Yeah.
Like, your brain is so creative, just like you were using it to get your fix or to get your drink, making sure that happens. Now I use that to make sure other shit gets done every day, making sure I'm checking stuff off my to-do list.
Yeah. So what do you do when you're faced with moments of challenge? I mean, for it sounds like for the longest time that was your mechanism to kind of cope with the challenges of life. Obviously, we're not absolved from challenges in our lives just because we're not drinking anymore. What are some of the tools that and resources that you turn to today in your clear state of mind
Mhm.
and and you pursuing, your sobriety that maybe weren't accessible to you, in even in the earlier days of your sobriety?
Yeah. My biggest thing, it makes me emotional, is asking for help because
Okay.
before I always felt like it was me against the world, when I would get in that depression, like even trying to explain it didn't work. I felt like no one understood what I was going through but me. And if I asked for help, I'm now putting that burden on that person. And now in my recovery, I realize that there are people that love me, that want me at no matter what stage I'm in, and want me even more when I'm feeling low because they want to support me and lift me up and remind me of who I am. And that's something I never thought I would have in my recovery because, you just feel like trying to stay sober is your battle. It's
Yeah.
you always battling. But there are so many people that are waiting and rooting for you and wanting the best for you. So being able to now know when I get triggered, which is usually stressful situations, I don't get triggered being around alcohol anymore. I don't really get cravings at all. But I think it's when those stressful times come up, you have that quick thought, a fucking drink would fix it, like just
Yeah.
for a second. And in those moments, if it stays long enough, I can reach out to someone in my community, a close friend, and just let them know, hey, I'm struggling.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the episode. If you are, we'd really love it if you could leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcast or a rating on Spotify. And of course, please feel free to invite somebody into the conversation. If you feel like you have a story to share on the podcast, why not apply to be a guest? You can do so by completing the form on the podcast description or find it on stackanddays.com. That's stackndays.com. But for now, let's jump back into the conversation. So we talk about community, right? You have obviously built your own community that was based in Houston. Now you've moved to Tulsa. Being that community is such a cornerstone of your sobriety and your recovery, how has that transition worked from you? How do you envision it continuing to play a role in your life?
Creating Sober Girls was like one of the best things that I could have ever done because, it helped me realize that there are so many women who are also looking for this type of community, women who might be sober or sober curious. They just want to see what that life is like going out and having a good time and it not being about alcohol, being about connection and forming bonds with the people that you're actually with. So coming to Tulsa, I plan to bring that with me. So far I already have a few meetings with their women in recovery group they have here with their Tulsa Family Services. Every state, every community does sobriety a different way, right? So it's all about learning for me. It's about seeing and being a part of their community and seeing how they have events or what things they do and bringing that to Tulsa because Sober Girl Houston is really just the foundation. I would love to have Sober Girls everywhere because all women deserve that option to have a choice, to know that, yeah, you can still go out on a Friday or Saturday night with your girls, but it does not have to be about tequila. Y'all can get a section with mocktails. You can have a good time and not have it alcohol centered. And that's just the message that I really want to pass along, especially to the women who are just starting their sobriety. I like to be very active in the recovery centers and like the women's home, just to let those women know that once you get out of here, there are options. There are things you can do.
Hmm. No, I love that. And I feel like, you can kind of just take that model of community anywhere you go, right? And I'm going to assume that it doesn't mean that Sober Girls Houston goes away. It just means that you're just not there on a daily basis and you're able to create, similar experiences in Tulsa. As a woman of color, and you obviously you commune with all types of women, right? But as a woman of color, are there kind of unique challenges that you've found in just your dialogue and you connecting with other women of color that you think is unique to your story and their stories, and maybe a little dissimilar to other women that you've spent time with?
We were actually, me and a friend were just talking about this earlier this week about women of color, talking about their sobriety. I've found you through the Instagram community of sobriety. And like I always say, we're always the same group of people in the comments, cheering each other on, rooting for each other. And I think that there are a limited amount of women that are out there that are of color that are talking about their sobriety and being very proud of it and, telling their story, because I think there's still a lot of shame in the Black community. We're supposed to, especially as a Black woman, we're supposed to be so strong, so invincible that showing vulnerability can be seen as a weakness when, we know it's really a strength. And so I think that as time changes, which I hope that, with things like Sober Girls and like your platform, letting the younger generation see it, I feel like that's almost prevention at its core, because if I would have saw someone who looked like me, who was talking about going out and not drinking and telling me the different options, maybe things would have been a little different. I wouldn't have thought of only going and getting blackout drunk every single time I go, because that's what the media or TV or movies kind of show you. So I hope that there will be a difference, later on in years to come.
Yeah. I wonder sometimes if folks of color, because we've experienced so much systemic and societal pain, if we're prone to turning to alcohol, maybe more so than, the average person. And then obviously from a study perspective, it's not, labeled an addiction unless you claim it for yourself, right? So I feel like there's a lot of folks who are walking through, the world right now who clearly have an issue with the substance, but are not at that spot right now where they're necessarily have identified it being an issue for them, or they haven't hit that rock bottom, or they haven't gotten that third DUI, or they haven't spent time in prison. I mean, I've talked to the gamut of folks, where sometimes they really have to be shaken into their own like recovery journey, and some folks never get there. I mean, I drank for 3 decades before I got to a place where I was like, I got to do something differently here, right? And to your point, like I feel like having platforms where folks of color can be open about it are helpful in at least providing an alternative narrative to what that can look like in our communities. I think it's super important, but I think it ultimately does boil down to the individual. So the question I have for you is, how did you cross that threshold of vulnerability where you went from identifying your issue for yourself and addressing your issue for yourself to the point when then you wanted to then speak very publicly and open about it? I mean, because you've been on the news, you've been in documentary, like you've covered your story in on many
Yeah.
different platforms. How did you cross that threshold to be open and vocal about it, as opposed to, I guess, for lack of a better term, like recovering in silence?
Yeah. And to, jump off of what you said, I think a lot of that is also generational and societal. Like if you go to certain hood spots or you go in the hood, you go in the corner store, the grocery store they have, you're going to see more alcoholic beverages. You're not going to see nutritious items. We know all this, it's pandered to us
Yeah,
to do these things. So it's kind of like going against the system when you decide to be sober. I feel like a lot of Black families,
yeah,
a lot of families all have like drunk Uncle Ronnie who, he's just been like that as long as you've been alive, where nobody talks about getting him into treatment or, the things that they've done to try to help him. It's just known. So, those are things in the Black community that, hopefully we can change as we all, break our generational curses. Um, but for me, like when I first created Sober Girls, I started it on the app Meetup. And I started on Meetup because I had previously used that app when I was diagnosed as being bipolar. I went on there to find other Black women who were diagnosed with that, and was able to go out and learn a lot and meet a lot of interesting people who also were going through the same diagnosis at that time. And so when I created Sober Girls, it really was a private group. I had no intention of it doing what it's done or taking off like it did, or even sharing my story as much as I have, like you said. Um,
yeah.
but after our first meetup, there was about 3 or 4 girls that showed up, and it was great. And when I left, there was like this weight that felt like lifted off of me, like being able to ask, "Why did you come out today?" to the women that were there, and hearing their reasons why was so fucking empowering. It was like, wow, like this is really needed and important. It doesn't exist like this type of community for women in sobriety or sober curious. Like this isn't your normal AA group. This isn't your women's support group. This is like real connection where you can come in as yourself. You've been sober a few hours, bet. Let me show you what life is like enjoying yourself in sobriety. There's no rules, there's no guidelines. This is just come as you are and you're accepted. So being able to offer that really made me want to talk about it, and really wanted me to show people the change that happens when you recover, because a lot of videos and things you'll see with addiction is people really in it, but people also don't highlight the change in your eyes, the sparkle that comes back, the joy in your face, the color, all of those characteristics that come back when you choose yourself over alcohol needs to be seen and validated. And that's what really made me turn my pain into some type of purpose.
I love that. Had you always been kind of an outgoing, person, or was that something that came about in you kind of blossoming in your
Oh,
sobriety?
this has always been me. Like I said, I was loud and boisterous when I was drunk, and I'm gonna be just the same about my sobriety. I mean, always
I love
been
it.
this way. Like, even when I was drinking, I would host like game day watch parties, I would MC. So things like this it's just about a different topic, but just as loud
Good, good. Just to be clear, I just wanted to make sure that everybody out there knew that this is
every
you.
day.
So look, every I love that. So in creating Sober Girls Houston, potentially now officially, recreating it in Tulsa, this is like it's an open space, right? So it sounds like you don't subscribe or to any specific like dogma, right? Like if it's AA, great, you're welcome. If it's smart recovery, great, you're welcome. How do you deal with like recovery purists who believe that that it's got to be one way or it's got to be the highway? Your sobriety isn't created equal because you haven't pursued this specific program. I'm assuming because you are so vocal, you've interacted with that
Mhm.
conversation. How do you and if you haven't, then fantastic. But if you have, you know. Okay,
Yes.
sounds like you have.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah. I
have,
mean,
how do
yeah,
you
I mean,
approach that?
that one's interesting to me because, like I said, I went back to school to become a chemical dependency counselor. So part of your training is you have to go and work at recovery system centers. Do your practicums with other counselors, and do group therapy, host group, all of those things. So when we would meet up at the end of the week to kind of discuss with the other counselors how our week went, I was actually taken aback by how many older counselors you could find that were very against using certain phrases. You can't say you're an addict if you're just abusing alcohol. You can't say that you're clean if you're still taking like medicated assisted treatment. I mean, it was absolutely bizarre. And I think that type of mindset really sets us back. I also think that's why, me personally, I didn't do well with AA. It's such on a rigid guidelines that I'm also a little bit of a perfectionist, and it kind of sets me back if I feel like I'm not doing everything up to status quo. So when I made Sober Girls, it was just about be you, be who you are. I feel like people have more growth and can do better when they're just honest with where they are in their story and their situation. But those old time things are very active still to this day. And I usually
Yeah,
take it right head on. Like, as soon as they say it, let's talk about it. Everybody's sobriety is different.
yeah. I mean, I think that's important. I mean, this stacking days is agnostic when it comes to how you go about getting your sobriety and your recovery and your healing. Because I feel like at the end of the day, like that is the whole purpose of this. Is like I don't really care how you go about doing it. If it's working for you, your life is clearly better today than it was when you were in your active struggle. So. I appreciate your perspective on how you deal with that head on. I think you have a unique perspective, and it's like I think that the world of recovery, the world of sobriety is
Mhm.
evolving, and these old dogmatic perspectives and views, I think, I think that there's probably a lot of value that we can get from those chapters in the history of sobriety, but there is also I think there's a lot to learn from where we are today and where we can move forward. I think that this space that we're in makes it more accommodating for people of color, even right, like to be a part of the
Yeah, and have a
dialogue,
seat at the table.
versus 20 years
Right,
ago.
exactly. And even before I went back to school, I worked in psychiatry. And I remember working for a psychiatrist that did Suboxone, right? And at this time, it was still
Okay.
fairly new. Like, the DA was very rigid. They pop up like once a week to check all the things. Like, it was pretty intense. But the change in the patients from when they came in to after they started their Suboxone treatment was like a day and night. You know what I mean? Like, as long as they stayed on their treatment, they could lead successful lives. They could go to work every day, pick up their kids, do all of the things, all the roles they need to do. So, for these like old timers or this old dogmatic rules that would say Suboxone or any type of medicated assisted treatment is not recovery, it infuriated me because I've seen it work. I've seen people change their lives with this option. And me personally, I had to try anti-abuse when I first tried to get sober, and it gave me a few months. It really did. But I wasn't ready at that time, you know? And still now
Mm,
I have to take
mm.
SSRIs because I want to make sure my mental health is well. So for someone to tell me that that's not real recovery, I can't accept that. I can't accept that logic.
So just for those who don't know, what are SSRIs?
Antidepressants.
Cool. It's just that I feel like some of this dialogue
Yeah,
is so new for some
it
folks,
is.
right? Like,
Yeah,
you know,
antidepressants, right.
uh, I mean, when I first got sober, the first stop that or one of the first stops that I made was to my general
Gotcha.
practitioner, and I got prescribed naltrexone. I was like, look, I was like, I'm just gonna throw as many things as I can at this right now, just so that I could fortify myself. And I was like, if medication is out there, I'm not generally one to go to the doctor. I'm not generally one to take medication
Mm,
for anything, but I need to do something a little bit different this time around to give myself a fighting chance. And yeah, I'm sure that there's tons of, schools of thought out there around like, taking this medication, that medication. It's not
mhm,
true recovery, true sobriety, but it worked for me. So I feel like, talk to a professional and, and potentially it will work for you or maybe not. But I think opening the dialogue up is the most important piece. So I appreciate your
yeah.
perspective on that. Um, what do you think some of the misconceptions are out there about the process of recovery, and how can we like better educate our community about what some of these issues are from your perspective? You've obviously have your own story, but you're also very much
Mhm,
a trained,
mhm.
professional in the space. So what are your thoughts
I
on
think
that?
something I came across a lot and that I personally also believe that, you can't be an alcoholic if you don't drink every day. That's something that
Mm,
really set me back a lot because I kept telling myself that, even though I was personally a binge drinker. So it didn't matter if I did it every day because whenever I did start, I didn't know when to stop. But I kind of kept that in the back of my head. You would see it on TV. This is what you would hear. And so if I didn't drink every day, I felt like that didn't apply to me. And even when I would, see clients, I hear that a lot as well. Just like, oh, I drink when I drink, only on the weekends. And it's not about that. I think we need to look more at the bigger picture of when you do drink, how excessive is it? Does it hurt the people around you when you start drinking? And I think it kind of will help the recovery community a little bit because people are going to know they have an addiction sooner, right? And to definitely, like you said, go to a medical professional. That's literally the first step always, because that way you can at least see where you are in addiction. Are you even in an addiction? You could just be in an addictive personality and just need to change a few things. There's so many different
yep.
levels of addiction, and especially now that they, graded on a scale from like mild, moderate to severe, um, it makes it a lot easier to go and tell your truth and be honest with the medical health professionals. And yeah, just see where you are. Get a good, feel for it.
Yeah. The conversation, the honest conversations are refreshing once you can step into them. There was, like I said, I'd been drinking for almost 3 decades. I started when I was in my early teens, and I didn't stop until I was in my early 40s. And I probably saw, I saw enough medical professionals over 30 years to know that I wasn't always having an honest conversation with them. You know what I mean? And now I go to the doctor and they're like, do you have an issue? Do you drink? I'm like, nope. It's like, and I can honestly like answer that question and feel really, really, really good about it. So I think that, those points that you made are spot on. I wanted to ask you about, something that I had been thinking about recently for myself. I feel like when you're moving into a space of sobriety, when you're moving into a space of recovery and your own development, you don't necessarily have a sense of what the destination is going to look like. And I still don't feel as though that I've arrived at the destination, but sometimes you don't even really have a sense of like what the road is going to look like. Right. And there's certain items I think that have come up that were surprising to me in just
Mhm.
my own journey. Is there anything that has stood out for you that is pleasantly surprising to you in your recovery that maybe you didn't anticipate coming into it?
That's a really good question. And I'm trying to think. I mean, um, I didn't expect any of this process at all. Like before I got sober, I never even knew I couldn't even imagine what sober life looked like. You know what I mean? Like when I think back to when I was having cravings so bad and I would have to like sit on my hands because I couldn't fight the urge to get up and go run to get some type of alcohol, to now when I can sit next to friends who are, having their drink and I've got my mocktail and there's no problem. Like I don't even know that person because I never even imagined she could exist. So every day when I wake up and choose sobriety, I'm surprising myself every single day. I think the biggest thing though is really the things that I've accomplished. Like you said, like we don't know where this journey is. I never even had goals before I got sober. My only goal was to get alcohol by the end of the day. Okay, I'm out. When do I get more? How do I get more? So to have goals that are a month away from now or a year from now is unbelievable to me because I don't that person, I never knew she would exist, but I'm so glad that she's here.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. I mean, people use this cliche term all the time, like sobriety is my superpower. You know, and it is cliche and it is corny. It is corny when you say it out loud, but you really do feel that way when you're in it, right? Like the version of yourself literally feels as though you are operating on another level. And to be able to lean into that with clarity is it for me has been unanticipated. I didn't anticipate it. I didn't anticipate who and that person is and who that person could be. I feel like you lift this veil off of yourself and you truly feel as though that you have an unlimited capacity to live your life in the way that you want to. So I love seeing it, which is why I love talking to folks of color, because it's like we get so beat down by so many things in this world, to be able to like step into a space where we are fully empowered to be the authors of our lives, I think is a magical
It's
space
super
to be. So,
empowering.
um, and
I said
say
it's
that one
super
more time.
empowering. Like I feel that type of power
Yeah.
radiating through me in every aspect of my life, no matter what I'm doing. If I'm just going to the grocery store, I have an extra pep in my step because I feel like I'm starting to know who I am as a person and that no one can change what I think because I'm very sure of myself at this stage. And so you kind of just walk with this extra confidence and this extra swag that I feel like I didn't have before because I'm very comfortable with who I am and the decisions I make.
Yeah. I love that. I love a little pep in the step when you're in the supermarket.
Feel like I'm on a runway.
um,
Like, what is she so happy about? Baby, I'm sober. I'm here.
I love it. I love it. You just trying to get some cereal and people are just wondering what
I'm
is going
voguing
on
down
with
the
her.
aisle, literally.
That's great. Um, so I got a couple last questions here as we take it out. But one of them is, and I think this is really important in our community because oftentimes we tend to lean on silence as a coping mechanism culturally. So the question that until potentially it's too
Mm,
late, right? I think we've all seen stories of folks dealing with mental health issues, obviously substance issues, and sometimes it's too late before we recognize that the people were actually,
mhm.
in a dark spot. How would folks have known that you were struggling at the time of your darkest days without you explicitly telling them that you were?
That's a hard one because, like you already said, the isolation, that's always like the first sign is because, when you get in that dark hole, you don't feel like anyone can help you. You don't feel like there's any way out. The feeling of depression is so hard to really explain all of the feelings of it because it is just so heavy. And by the time it engulfs you completely, you don't even know that you're there. Like now I can kind of see when my depression is starting to come. I know that I don't want to get out of bed. I don't even feel like doing my basic, hygiene. I don't feel like doing anything. Nothing matters. Everything has no value. But that could also just be, a monthly thing, with a woman's cycle. So sometimes it's kind of trying to figure out which one is real, is my brain playing tricks on me. And even that can be exhausting, just in its own. And so I find that I isolate, I don't talk to people. I just give them like surface value replies or But the isolation is the biggest, and of course I did have friends that would reach out and say, "Hey, I haven't heard from you in a few days. Just wanted to check in." And, I would still not talk to them either. But when I was like actually really suicidal, I would drink during these times. So eventually
Mm.
a phone call will come and I would be belligerent. I would just be talking or not making any sense, no, not coherent at all. And those situations that got to the extreme led to two suicide attempts. But I was under the influence both times when those happened. And I think that obviously had a lot to do with it because now, in my right state of mind, completely sober, I would never want to leave. I would never want to opt out on this experience that is life. I would never want to hurt the people that are near me. And even once I would sober up after those attempts, um, I felt horrible, for the things I did to my mom, the people I hurt, just the whole experience, um, and so that kind of makes you also see things a little differently. But I would just look for, that isolation and just be very persistent, even if that person doesn't really reply or doesn't give you back a quick response, show up, pop up, just let them know that you're there because they feel like no one is there. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. Your mom's got to be super proud of you.
Oh, yeah,
I would
listen,
imagine,
she's a
right?
queen. I'm just trying to be like her, okay? She's done so much. But, yeah, she is so sweet and so proud. She told me, when I moved to Tulsa, she's like, "You don't have any kids, you don't have a husband. The worst thing that could happen is that you gotta come home. So, go, experience, try it out." So, she's very
Yeah.
uplifting.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love to hear that. Last question I have for you, Danae. For someone who's sitting there and listening to this, man, woman, other, whatever, and they're realizing there are just aspects of my life that are unmanageable. I think it's because of the alcohol, but I don't necessarily know what the first step could be in me moving in a different direction. What would you suggest to that person?
We kind of talked about this. It's definitely going to be go see a medical professional. Of course, have a conversation with yourself. They've got all these questionnaires online that you can do to check out but I think the biggest thing is to sit down with the person who is the closest to you, whether it's your wife, your husband, your mom, whoever that person is, and ask them what do they think because no one knows you better than the
Hmm.
person that's close to you. We hurt the people that are close to us the most. And it's just because there's that familiarity. We know them. We know that they're supposedly going to love us no matter what we do to them. And so that person should be able to be raw and honest with you. And I think once you do that, it'll give you more of a idea of what's going on with your drinking. And then take it to a medical professional like your PCP, a counselor, and just say, I think I'm drinking too much, but I'm not really sure what to do next. And that medical professional will take it from there. They really will, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I mean, bringing it to someone that you trust is I have asked this question a handful of times to this point, and I don't know if I've ever gotten that answer. And I think that that's almost as impactful as being honest with yourself, is being honest with the people who you love and who
Mhm.
love you, because it takes a certain amount of true vulnerability to be able to bring that conversation to the table, especially if you're struggling. So I appreciate that
Yeah, and
perspective.
it
Thanks for
gives them
sharing.
accountability because, that's really what you need in your sobriety. You can say, I think I have a problem out loud to yourself, but when you say it to other people, now it's real. It's a real fucking thing. And they will hopefully hold you accountable and you hold yourself.
Yeah. Love it. Danae, where can folks find you if they need more pep?
Yes, you need some more pep in your step. Absolutely. I will be dancing down at I'm just kidding. They can follow me on Instagram at my page, which is randomly_rude, or you can follow me on Instagram under our Sober Girls page, which is Sober Girls HTX. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. Just go to our direct page, which is www.sobergirlshouston.com.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, look, thank you again for spending some time with us. I know you got a lot going on, but it looks like your place is coming together beautifully.
It's
So
rough.
congratulations. That looks
It's
good. Yeah. This
that,
must be the
that's
place.
what I'm saying. Wait, where is it? There it is. Yeah,
I love it. I
absolutely.
love it. Today, thank you so much. Let's make sure that we stay in touch and good luck out there in
Yes, thank
Tulsa.
you so
Okay.
much. This was amazing. I really is the best way to start my day. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks everyone for listening in. Stay tuned, and next week we'll have another episode of Stacking Days. Peace. I appreciate you guys listening to the Stacking Days podcast. I hope this episode added value to your recovery and wellness journey. Before we go our separate ways, let's connect on social. You can find us on TikTok and Instagram at Stacking Days or via the website www.stackingdays.com. By supporting the show, you can play a direct role in amplifying people of color in their pursuit of recovery. The easiest way to do that is to subscribe or hit the follow button. This way, you'll never miss an episode, all while playing an active part in creating the ecosystem where diverse voices in healing matter. This show is for the purpose of education and connection and is not a replacement for therapy or recovery care. For more information on the resources and support available, take a look at SAMHSA and some other resources shared in the description. Until we meet again, be well, one day at a time.